Could Deebo Samuel be on the move before the NFL draft? The San Francisco wide receiver, star, athlete, player, running back, wide receiver, return extraordinaire has officially requested a trade. And how does this impact the potential landscape of the National Football League? Which teams could Deebo Samuel end up on? We break all that down, plus some more NFL news in action. The XFL looking to dethrone the USFL a year before it even begins. We share our thoughts on that and much more. Plus, we interact with the audience on today's episode. PFN Daily. I'm your host, as always, Cody Rourke, video host and NFL analyst here at Pro Football Network. And joining me right now is my co-host. He is the Deebo Samuel fantasy manager here. He's your mother's favorite fantasy analyst. He's a Green Bay Packers shareholder, and he's a lover of Black Rifle Coffee. He is the co-host of PFN Daily, Tommy Garrett. Tommy, what a, like I said, when we feel like there's not news going on in the NFL.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, out of left field, here comes Deebo Samuel requesting a trade. This is huge if, in fact, it does happen or something happens with this.
It was funny. Like, me and you kind of joked around about this, about seeing, like, his brother's comments on social media. And we're like, it's just the brother talking, whatever. And because he had to backtrack it. Turns out, maybe there was some actual info in that. He just pretty much got told, hey, don't leak this because we actually want to handle this ourselves. But yeah, like I said, we're wanting more storylines because honestly, there haven't been enough this offseason, apparently. We're kind of addicted to it at this point. But yeah, the last thing we needed on what was supposed to be a chill 420 for everyone was Deebo Samuel to all of a sudden say, hey, 49ers futures bets, those are going up in smoke today. So yeah, it's been a fun one.
That's a clever, 49ers fans right now, they're not chilling. They're definitely trying to, self-medicate with the anxiety that is coming about Deebo Samuel potentially leaving. Let's get to some comments here. Outlaw 2448, our good friend here on the show. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to our good friend A-Buff66 as well. But going back to Outlaw's comment, he says, I hear the Kansas City is a nice place if Deebo Samuel ever wanted to leave the 49ers. And look, Skiing Ian, our good friend Rap Sheet, had said something along the lines that, hey, the Chiefs could be a team that's interested. And you know what makes sense? They have 2 first-round picks in this year's NFL draft, back-to-back 29 and 30. I mean, at this point, it's like, if the Chiefs end up getting Deebo, I quit, dude. I
think when we start the whole conversation of, because we're about to get into this, where we talk about, okay, if Deebo Samuel is to be traded, A, there's the why we still have to cover. B, it's the where. It's who could go, where could he go? Obviously, Deebo Samuel is going to need a first-round draft capital. So we can all of a sudden eliminate several teams that might not have one. Then we look at the teams that have, who have multiple first-round draft picks. Those are the ones that become interesting. Yeah. Then it comes down to connections. Who is actually potentially already familiar with Deebo Samuel that have already been in the wide receiver market and could be making a move to try to acquire a talent like a Deebo Samuel rather than going in the draft? Because there's that whole aspect of, getting the person versus the person you're hoping someone could be. We're all these GMs are hoping they could draft someone that could be Deebo Samuel.
Yes.
Like, there's only one guy like him, but also it's going to take a system who can use him like that. So you're going to need a creative play caller. You need a team that has multiple draft picks, and you're also going to need someone who probably has a little bit of ties to the 49ers. So I think there's a couple things we can kind of narrow down, but I mean, first we got to get into, how we even got here in the first place.
No, spot on there. Miami comes to mind here. I know someone's like, they don't have money. They have draft capital, and they could restructure some contracts.
Could you imagine Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Mike Gesicki all on one team?
Now the question is, can Tua take that next step, right? But then if he doesn't,
he is officially the next Josh Rosen. I don't want to hear any excuses.
Yeah. This makes Tom Brady to Miami in 2023 a little bit more likely if that is the case.
Oh, Miami instantly becomes the number 1 landing spot for any free agent quarterback. Plain and simple.
Easily there. And look, they have draft capital too. So they could acquire Deebo in that regard there. But right here, there's a question. So you don't think Deebo would want top money? He does.
Absolutely
he wants to reset the market. And look, I think if we look at Deebo Samuel, he should reset the market. Now, here's the interesting part. You mentioned, how did we get here? Well, I think a lot of it too, we were under the premise that, hey, Deebo is, holding out until the 49ers offer him a contract. Apparently the 49ers have been ready and willing to pay him according to reports. Yeah. And he's been hesitant, and he is frustrated and unhappy with the way that they have used him. So I go back,
which is weird to me. That's
they
weird.
Put him at running back when the injuries happen. So you know what that tells me, Tommy, and I'm eager for your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
What that tells me is Deebo Samuel is the ultimate team guy. Like when a team said, hey, we've got all these injuries at the running back position. We want to use you in a different way. We want to use you as a jack of all trades guy. And there's going to be times you line up primarily in the backfield next to Jimmy G. okay, there is that angle right there. Was he unhappy with doing that, but willing to do it because he is a great team player? I think that is the case there. Also, like, does this have anything to do with maybe Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, there's rumblings. Like, we've heard rumblings, and obviously Tony Pauline on Draft Insiders last night with Trey Wingo had said that, hey, if there's a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, look for it to be after round 1 of the 2022 NFL draft next week in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. I mean, looking at Debo and Jimmy G together, they've had a really good rapport and chemistry with one another. I wonder if that has something to do with it, on top of them making him essentially play running back rather than just receiver.
I think there's obviously going to be that kind of part of the conversation, but if we go back to when he was at the NFL Combine, like, we saw what he was doing, and a lot of teams came back the next year saying, hey, look, we're trying to find our own Debo. We're trying to find that guy, not like a needle in the haystack. We're trying to find our next Debo Samuel as a guy who you can kind of use in multiple different positions. Like, the more you can get out of a player, the better the value that player is actually to your team. And no one's been able to find more success than the 49ers have. Like, they have, like, the little almost have like a brand new position. Everyone's called, the new wide back. Maybe that's the new edge, because edge was never really a thing. It was defensive end and outside linebacker, but whatever. But you need a player that can do that. I think Debo Samuel just has the skill set to where, hey, look, you're an athlete. Just go be an athlete. And that's kind of what they did last year to set the set the NFL record for rushing touchdowns for a wide receiver, I should say. Had almost 1,800 total yards from scrimmage. I believe he was third in the NFL last year. He was only behind, I think, Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris and Cooper Kupp in terms of percentage of scrimmage yards for their offense. Like, Debo Samuel was the 49ers offense for a good chunk of that time, because it also got them through that period where Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse, kind of had George Kittle on the field, off the field, and he's just found so much success. I mean, maybe he's like, okay, if I'm looking at the money that some of these wide receivers are getting, we're looking at guys like Devontae Adams, who's getting about $28.5 million on average per year, and then Tyreek Hill is going to get about annual average about $30 million. Like, they're doing just wide receiver things. I'm doing both. Like, he's going to want to get that money. And it also makes sense, too, like, he's going to want a contract because Tony Dandy, it's kind of play that inside game here. Like, Tony Dandy is his agent. He's from CAA. He also represents Denzel Ward, who just got that massive payday with the Cleveland Browns. Not only that, but he represents A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf as well. 2 other receivers we're expecting to sign some massive deals in this upcoming period. So if he wins out here and gets money for Debo, in turn, all these other guys also get it, and it lines his pockets even more. I guess to me, the usage is what the most interesting thing here, because you just had so much success, and arguably your value might never be higher than what it is right now. So absolutely, strike while the iron is hot. But this team has found a way to use you like no one else ever could with Mike McDaniel. Maybe part of it's losing Mike McDaniel and the curiosity of what's going to happen if Trey Lance is under center. I don't really know. Like, only Debo Samuel and his representatives know the true reason when it comes to the usage. But you can't argue with the results on the field. And if winning games at the end of the day are what matters, Debo Samuel helped the 49ers win games.
He sure did. I mean, he won them a lot of games. He won me a lot of my fantasy matchups in 2021.
Facts.
Like, there were times I was down by 27 plus points, and Debo would all of a sudden get like 34 or 45.
Yeah.
Like, Debo is a machine. And so, like, I still have him in my fantasy league, and I'm excited for maybe wherever he ends up. I think for
a lot of Brandon Ayuk managers right now are really wondering if Debo Samuel moves, like, that Brandon Ayuk value to the moon.
This would be great value for Brandon Ayuk. It gives him a chance to expand and become that number 1 guy, though I feel like he does thrive as that number 2 option because of the fact that Debo commands attention and it frees him up to do what he does. Can he?
There's a lot of conversation when a player leaves. Okay, instantly the next guy up, whoever that would be, instantly is becoming a value. You have to be capable of taking on that responsibility. Not every number 2 is capable of being a number 1. Look at someone like a Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, he was great as a number 2, but struggled as a number 1. Like, not everyone is built for that. And like you talk about with coverages, like, sometimes it's easier when you're getting that number 2 corner or when everyone is kind of focused on the primary target. So I think, well, it would be good for Ayuk in terms of maybe target share. Like, maybe in efficiency, it might not be as great for him, but regardless, like, he would still see a lot more work than he probably is right now.
No, spot on there. We have some interesting stuff going on in our comment section. We got this guy named Gandalf the Straight, obviously Brandon Olivier. They're talking about, like, Detroit. No one wants to go to Detroit. Hey, the Lions are gaining more.
Do not sleep on Detroit. Don't sleep on Detroit. They are actually building something. Like, they've been the laughing stock. Like, we go back to, like, the brown paper bags over the heads and things like that. But, like, we go back to the last 6 weeks of last season. The Lions were 500 towards the end of last season. I believe they went like 5-8 over the last part of their season or whatever. Like after the tie to Pittsburgh, like the Lions are starting to build something, and it takes years to do that. Like just because they're not instantly good doesn't mean that can't happen over time. Like you're still looking, you got a bridge quarterback in there right now who Jared Goff, as much as I want to clown on him, like the guy can play competent football. Like look what he did for the Rams in those years. Like he did okay, but honestly, with Sean McVay talking into his head until 15 seconds on the clock, like it's probably going to help things. You've got a really good offensive line, one of the best in the NFL. You've got DeAndre Swift, who's a top 3 pass catching back and also a guy who can handle a lot of volume. You've got another solid backup behind him in Jamal Williams. The defense got better. You're hoping if Jeff Okudah can maybe take that next step up, like because he's just really struggled. He's been one of the biggest busts of his class so far. Maybe he gets better. You've got a really good number 1, you're assuming, in Amon-Ra St. Brown after what we saw last year. You bring in an explosive threat in a DJ Chark who's looking to try to re-cement his status in the NFL. So you've got an explosive threat. Then we throw in TJ Hawkinson, who week after week looks more and more like a Lion with that hair growing out. Like the Detroit Lions are actually literally building something right now. And I think a lot of people are going to be impressed with what the Detroit Lions do. If they capitalize on this draft, which they absolutely could, you got picks 2, 32, and 34. If you let's not even throw Deebo Samuel into here. Like if you just do well on these draft picks, maybe if Aiden Hutchinson comes in, because a lot of the talk is Walker going number 1. So here you secure an edge rusher. Then you want to go with a wide receiver sitting here at 32. That can make a ton of sense. And then at 34, you can add more depth to this team. The Lions are going to quietly start building something that I think could end up being like the 3rd best team in the NFC North, which is something me and you have both alluded to. We could both see the Detroit Lions finishing ahead of the Chicago Bears this year.
Yeah, no, spot on there too. And hey, real quick, Gandalf, if you're going to be trolling and, talking smack to Brandon for who his team is, you at least have to put on record who your team is. You can't just keep clowning another team without representing who you are a fan of. That's going to be one of those rules there. But obviously play nice in the comment section, folks. Keep it respectful. Agree to disagree if need be. Like, no need to get disrespectful, though, folks. Keep it civil in the comment section there.
I still can't wait for Hard Knocks with Dan Campbell. I cannot wait.
Like I said, too, and look, Gandalf has his opinion that he says, I'm going to hit the snooze button on Detroit. Dan Campbell, are you kidding me? He says the guy's a clown. You might be the only person in the world.
Based on what? Get out of here with that. No,
you might think that might be the only guy. We all love Dan Campbell. This is a Dan Campbell stand show here. Like I
knock on wood if you're with me. Let's go back to the other Hard Knocks episodes.
No, it's gonna be super fun there. Yeah, I remember that. Good old John Gruden, man.
Honestly, okay, let's get back to Deebo though. Honestly, like because that's been the big storyline. Like, what are the other teams? Like we talk about, obviously Kansas City makes sense, Miami makes sense.
The Jets.
I think the other one to me is the Jets.
Before.
That's the big part. Not only were they in on Tyreek Hill, you've got the draft pick. So the New York Jets this year, you've got picks 4, 10, 35, and 38. That's a lot of draft capital they actually have. Not to mention that, but you do also have the former affiliation with Mike LaFleur, who was with the San Francisco passing game in 2019 and 2020, I believe it was, before he went to the Jets. And also Robert Saleh, the guy knows him as well. So you've got 2 guys who would be able to start conversations with the 49ers, because it's not like Deebo Samuel has a no trade clause in here, so he doesn't really get to have a ton of say in it. But at least these 2 sides will be able to work together pretty quickly with John Lynch there with the Giants. You talk with them, you've got plenty of draft capital. I think the Jets make a ton of sense. They're also a team that we know they need a wide receiver. Like I could honestly, straight up, Drake London at pick 4. I wouldn't hate it because I think it makes a ton of sense for this. But you bring in someone like a Deebo Samuel, I'm not going to hate on that either. But I think the Jets make a ton of sense in this. I think, like I said, Miami does. Are they willing to go that far? Who knows? I don't know what they would have to give up. And like I said, also like the Chiefs would be the one that like no one wants to see. Like you can't all of a sudden lose Tyreek Hill and then bring in Deebo Samuel. That's just not fair. Like life isn't supposed to work that way.
About the Chargers.
Oh my God. You want to talk about another dream scenario? Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Deebo Samuel. Austin Eckler back there too. Imagine a backfield, Austin Eckler and Deebo Samuel. Like that is dangerous itself on its own. And we've actually joked around about them bringing in another pass catching weapon because we're expecting their first round pick. Like
to be a receiver.
Yeah, to be a receiver. Or honestly, we thought corner. Corner is one, like if Derek Stingley Jr. dropped down there, I believe it's pick 17 they have. Let me check. Chargers have, pick 17. Like we could see that happening. We have like J.C. Jackson, you move Asante Samuel Jr. into the slot. Then you have someone like a Derek Stingley Jr. on the outside. Like there's a ton of different things that can happen. I guess at the end of the day, do you see this trade happening, or do you think they can end up getting something worked out?
It's very tough because I think you really have to figure out like what is it that Deebo truly wants. I mean, obviously we know he wants to be paid. 49ers sound like they're willing to pay him. So
that's been the point. Yeah.
What else is it with that? Does it have to do with quarterback, like personnel there? I'm not sure. I mean, this is stuff we don't know right now. We
That's
can
not
only
going to
just
change.
speculate it. I mean, because they made all this investment to go after Trey Lance.
Yeah.
And at some point he has to play. And if Jimmy G's traded, which maybe the anticipation will be after the NFL draft, after round 1, there's a possibility. Then that obviously makes sense that he would be the guy there. But also at the same exact time, like, is it just like, what does Debo want? Does he just want to be a receiver and not play running back? I don't know.
But isn't that devaluing yourself at the same time?
Kind of, in a sense. Like we know he can get a contract as a, the running back contracts aren't worthy. So it's like he wants to get
but he's not a route runner
contract.
like a Cooper Kupp, who's also sitting here trying to reset his own value.
We'll talk about Cooper and his contract stance, though, coming up a little bit later on the show.
Yeah, but part of what makes Debo Samuel so great is you can do everything with him.
Yeah.
And is anyone going to be able to do the same thing with him that 49ers have? Like, maybe if he goes to Miami with Mike McDaniel, who literally was the OC last year, like, he was the one who was instrumental with Debo Samuel because he was also the run game coordinator for quite some time, like the 5 previous years before that point when he followed Shanahan from Washington. Like, he knew how to use Debo also in the running game aspect. So I think stylistically he would be able to get the most out of him. But right now, Debo Samuel's value is at its highest with the 49ers. I saw Abuff actually mentioned on here too. The Eagles, they do have draft picks. So they don't have 3 anymore because they did make that trade with the New Orleans Saints. Basically, saying, hey, they basically took one of their first round picks and put it at Kmart layaway. Like, hey, we'll pick this up next year and see what it's at. But I think the interesting with the 49ers, like, it's not necessarily been in their MO to work with guys early. Like, look at what happened with George Kittle, Fred Warner, Trent Williams. Like, a lot of these guys, they were kind of waiting to the last minute to do things. And especially like some of the contracts we saw coming out, some of the speculated contracts, I should say, for George Kittle, they were ridiculously low. Like, he was being lowballed constantly during that frame. I don't see the 49ers wanting to make that same thing. Like, we've heard about this thing. I guess some reporters have been hearing about this since the Super Bowl, but haven't really reported. I know Peter Schrager, he was on Pat McAfee, said like he heard whispers about this around like Super Bowl kind of time frame about there was a potential rift between these two sides. So it's not like this is a brand new thing. So like clearly the 49ers have been aware of Debo Samuel wanting potential of a trade. Like, I think it's interesting. Like I said, we've seen so many guys get traded this year we never saw happening. I guess add Debo Samuel to the list of situations we didn't see coming. Like, not like the NFL draft needed more, intrigue, but if we see like a trade happen like on draft day or right beforehand, like, good God.
What did we deal with last year, right before the NFL draft started? The Aaron Rodgers trade rumors, the saga that
accumulation of information.
Now, going into this year's draft, Baker Mayfield possibly, Jimmy Garoppolo, Debo Samuel. I mean, nothing surprises me anymore here. I mean,
no, but at least I feel better about the reporting on this one than I did the other situations.
Well, yeah, I see what you did there too, right? A little bit more comfortability in a sense.
Right.
I don't know, man. I just think that this would be a needle-pushing move. Like, for the 49ers, you also have to ask, do you want to push Debo Samuel out of the NFC to an AFC team, which I think probably that seems like the more likely possibility for them. It reduces the amount of times you potentially have to see Debo.
True.
Right?
True.
There might be a chance you put him in the AFC, you maybe see him once every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're trading him to the Rams or to the Seahawks, obviously.
No.
I mean, it makes sense. You want to go, obviously, as far away as possible. Like, but the NFL, you play everyone at some point or another. Like, it's going to happen. Yeah. It kind of is what it is. You can only get away from someone for so long. And honestly, you're hoping, hey, look, at the end of the game, like, we're playing the Super Bowl. Like,
well, and that's the thing. You can't be scared of it. Like, you have to embrace, like, if you're willing to get rid of a guy, you have to be willing to face him and maybe take a lick from him. Like, that's
not just that, but if you're willing to trade a guy away, you're saying that we don't think you are an indispensable piece, and we can be okay without you at the end of the day. Because if you think you can't win without someone, you're not picking up that phone when someone is calling.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. So if they trade away Debo Samuel, they're saying we're comfortable thinking that we can continue on the trajectory that we're on right now with whatever assets we get back plus the personnel we have. Thank you for your service. We appreciate your time here, but good luck on your next path. Like, that's what it says to Debo Samuel, which I think is a little bit of a smack in the face, given what he's done for this team. Like I said, whatever the rift is that's going on right now, it'll all come out in the wash eventually. Maybe it's through a brother making comments on Facebook pages or whatever. But yeah, there's clearly something going on here. This is not something new. Like, clearly both sides knew this was coming.
I think in the coming weeks or something, we will find out a little bit more as to the why. Obviously he spoke to Jeff Darlington, and Jeff Darlington reported that, hey, Debo did tell me he has requested a trade officially from the 49ers, but he didn't want to get into the specifics of it, which means that there's some things going on and maybe we don't know. Like, is this a leverage play? It could be, right? I mean, I think sometimes you do see this, but there's also a point where a guy's like, hey, I know my value, and my value is not going to be met here for some reason. Like looking at the 49ers, I made it to the NFC Championship game.
I mean, it
not
could
much
be
has changed with this team. Like they haven't lost like a significant amount of guys. Like they're still a powerhouse, in my opinion. They'll be one of the top teams. They've added value. Yeah, you lose K1 Williams, you lose DJ Jones, but you get Javon Kinlaw back on the defensive side of the ball. You'll probably look in this year's NFL draft at cornerback.
They brought in Tre'Davious Ward from the Chiefs.
Yep, Travarius Ward. Yep, he's back there. Yeah, absolutely. He's on there. I think what is it, a 2 or 3 year deal? One of the other.
3-year 40.
Okay, so it's like
3-year 40.
They've kind of re-upped a little bit. They got some young guys that are still developing on the back end of that sector. They're going to be a good team. Like San Francisco is going to be a good team. Debo makes them elite. Now you take Debo away, I think they become a little bit more one-dimensional, right? Because now you're also relying on the fact that you're hoping that Brandon Ayuk steps up and becomes that guy.
They did get Ray McLeod from the Steelers.
I don't know. Yeah, could that be a sneaky under the radar move? Possibly.
I don't know. I'm just looking at that chart. That's it. I don't like the news. I just report on it.
Oh, man. We will see how things pan out here for the San Francisco 49ers and for Deebo Samuel. Do you believe that Deebo will be traded during the NFL draft, before or after? Drop your comments down below. Let us know here at youtube.com/Pro Football Network. Tommy, we have some more football news to get to, some interesting news.
Is there stuff? Well. Is there something else?
There's always something here. And I found it quite interesting that the XFL is trying to do everything in their power to diminish the beginning of the USFL.
We literally just talked about this happening. And like we literally said this could happen.
Well, so they've been running interference. XFL, Mark Ross, obviously, he follows me on Twitter, obviously, a former NFL executive with the New York Giants, he does some stuff with the NFL Network. They ran interference to counteract the impact of the USFL. On Monday evening, they held a big-time virtual conference call, in a sense, with NFL agents. And what they're doing, and they're offering it here because a lot of these agents will represent maybe some of their clients inside the USFL. Yeah. But what the XFL is doing here in 2023, the season will probably kick off in February and go out, I believe, all the way through May at this point. But the XFL, they're offering higher salaries and better benefits than the USFL. The XFL schedule goes from February to May, which offers more advantage to players who are looking for consideration from NFL teams for training camp when rosters expand to 90 for the offseason. The XFL will also provide full housing and meal costs during the season. And this is a quote obtained from ESPN. It says each of the XFL's 8 teams is expected to have 70-man rosters with 45 active for games, translating to 560 jobs for players, about 200 more than the current roster limits of the USFL. USFL players sign 2-year contracts, which complicate any effort to switch leagues in 2023. So at this point, the XFL will become, right now, because of their alignment with the developmental partnership with the NFL, not necessarily as a player development, but more so as a rules testing and also officiating, which is a huge topic of discussion. It allows the XFL to have more of the marquee talent pool. Like these guys in the USFL, there's going to have to be they're going to have their contract terminated in order to go play in the XFL, which you think the USFL is going to cut guys so they can go play in the XFL for the competition? Yeah. Nope, not going to happen. Interesting turn of events here. The XFL really trying to take over things.
I think Alan Outlaw put it right here put it really well. That's a lot to promise for the XFL, and it absolutely is.
Huge.
Because right now it's a race between the USFL and the XFL. Who can legitimize themselves first and who can get themselves the deepest into the shadow of the NFL? Because no one's trying to overtake it, but who can get as ingrained as closely as possible, just hold on to that back pocket of the NFL as best as they can. Right now, is the clubhouse leader the XFL? If it gets going, right now, it seems like the XFL would have the power to be able to put a massive hole in the USFL. The USFL has to win this season. I'm not just saying on the field, the product wise, but when it comes down to locking up their future, when it comes to the amount of money and capital they're going to have for expansion or trying to increase player salaries, increasing the depth charts, the amount of the player pool, that is going to all of a sudden be infringed on by the XFL. They're going to start pulling some of these guys in. And I can't help but wonder if the brand recognition of the XFL, going back to the original one with, Vince McMahon and He Hate Me, because I always remember that bumper sticker that had the license plate underneath of the shoulder pads that said He Hate Me. I still love that one to this day.
Love it. Classic.
Tommy Maddox, Steelers quarterback. He was actually the XFL MVP that year. He gets hurt. All of a sudden, in comes Ben Roethlisberger, and the rest is history. But yeah, like I said, you add those guys in, add in Dwayne Johnson, maybe add in a little sponsorship with Terramana. hopefully, because that stuff is incredible tequila, by the way.
Mm.
But I think it makes sense. Like I said, to me, it's a lot to promise, but it's
Yeah.
one of the issues we've had with the USFL is depth has obviously been a concern. We've kind of seen that. Like, there's not a lot behind what you're seeing on these starting lineups. Offensive line is the worst part. Yep. I think offensive line is the worst part because then in turn makes the quarterbacks they're getting pressure on them. And what we're already suspect, practice squad probably quarterbacks in the NFL. Now they've got, 6'4", like 250-pound guys running at them. Like, no one does well in those situations, let alone when you're not even on an NFL roster. But I mean, if the XFL can pull this off, I think it's going to be a massive issue for the USFL. But right now, like I said, but just the brand recognition and legitimacy that the XFL brings, that says a lot, because it wasn't like they folded on their own. COVID really was what screwed the XFL. And they did the same thing almost to the AAF at the same time. There's a reason neither of those two seasons ended the way we thought they were going to. So like I said, it's not like they folded on their own. Like the USFL, if things don't work out, you could see this league fold versus it was outside circumstances that caused the pause of the XFL, not to mention the owner, who was also, well, I guess the main investor is also the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, just wanting the information to build his own app and things like that, and which is why I'll never root for the Carolina Hurricanes, because you took away the Cup Snake. I love the Cup Snake.
Hey, that might be a cool thing that does return. I think one area of the XFL will have
DC
the
is back. They're bringing back the Cup Snake, no question about it.
I think they'll get a team. I'd like to see Denver get a team too, by the way, in the XFL.
Well, I would assume they're probably going to bring back the originals, right? Or the ones you just had in the latest iteration?
That's a great question. I mean, do they rebrand it entirely, go with different teams in different areas? Like, they might, like, trying the same thing over and over again. The definition of insanity, is
true. But what I have seen is
they've rebranded the logo, so it's like, okay, they may rebrand the actual teams themselves.
The new logo looks like a cryptocurrency company. Like, it does not look like the original XFL logo.
You just mentioned something I think is relevant. What if the XFL is working on these partnerships too with cryptocurrency, NIL stuff, and even just like sports books, like in general, like they're going to have the advantage over the USFL, in my opinion here. And I think another reason they'll have the advantage over the USFL is playing every single game for all these teams that are located like Tampa Bay. They're playing it in one spot. So really, is it really the Tampa Bay Bandits? Is it really the New Orleans Breakers when they're all in Birmingham every single week? That doesn't make necessarily too much sense. If the USFL wants to have a chance to counter, maybe you go and find places. Maybe you try to get lease agreements in stadiums or rental agreements to be able to go to these stadiums to play your games. That's the only way I can see it. The XFL will be in different stadiums in 2023.
Yeah.
They're going to have those different fan bases and those other people that are going to flock there just because of that. When you hold it in Birmingham, as you mentioned too, like over the weekend, the cost
savings though
was ridiculous. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. The cost savings of keeping everything in one spot is what helps out the USFL in the very beginning. If the XFL can pull it off where they can do multiple locations, like you play the Renegades back in Dallas, the Battlehawks are back in St. Louis, Seattle gets the Dragons again, get the Vipers down there in Tampa Bay, Houston has the Roughnecks. Like, if you can pull this off instead of playing everyone in one central location, then I think you would get a better turnout for each of those games, because fans don't want to travel to Birmingham necessarily right now to go watch these games. Like, it was easy for the locals to get there. Yeah, tornado weather, but not just that. It was like literally like right after the show yesterday. I was curious, so I looked it up. Flight prices for this weekend to go to Birmingham, this is coming out of Indianapolis. I'm about 40 minutes south of Indy, right? This included a layover in Charlotte. It was $650 to $800 for a plane ticket to go to Birmingham. The price of a ticket's $10. I'm not paying at that point $650 to fly from Indy to Birmingham when I could literally drive there quicker when you add in the layover. Like, to me, that it doesn't make sense at that point. I think that's why you might not see the turnout.
The cost of a rental car too is like ridiculous as well. So that's not worth it. Like, it doesn't make sense.
It's not. No.
So, that is an obstacle. That is definitely an issue here for these teams. But I will say,
it's that dual side. It's the double edge, right? It's helping them out to the beginning, like only having to worry about one location, but you're losing out probably on revenue. So you've got those two different sides. The
opportunity cost. Outlaw 2448 says it really is the Birmingham Stallions. So we could take pride in that. That's the team that we chose, Outlaw. And so we are in good company because the team that we root for, they are in Birmingham, and they are the Stallions.
And the New Orleans Breakers are also undefeated. So come at me, bro.
Yeah. But y'all guys are playing in our turf. Okay, you guys have to come to Birmingham.
Which means we're a better team because we can win on the road.
Oh,
you have to stick to a home field advantage trying to get your wins. Like, that's cheap. That's cheap. We're coming to your territory and winning. That's what the Breakers do. Go
Blue
Wave.
I wonder if the Stallions will have the most home fans there.
Man, you have to think so.
Because everybody, I mean, all the teams are in Birmingham, like we've talked about a million times here. But it's like, are there going to be more Stallion fans? Just because, like, hey, people from Birmingham are like, you know, we're going to root for a team that's Birmingham. Like, this is our team. Like, I don't know if anyone in Birmingham wants to vote for a New Orleans Breakers team or a Tampa Bay or Pittsburgh Maulers of all
That's
people.
why we settle it on the field.
Hey, we'll have to.
But yeah, honestly, I think the next couple weekends will be telling in terms of what the attendance is going to be. I think the first weekend we saw, like I said, we saw the Birmingham game, and I think that rain delay did not help things at all on Sunday. So we'll see what happens with that moving forward. But yeah, I think that when we start seeing the attendance, if it doesn't change and we're only getting fans there for the Stallions games, then this league is probably dead. Because like you can't have good football, bad football at that point, and then also have no one in the stands. Like there's no atmosphere. Like there's got to be something tangible for like to feel at home. Like, and when that Stallions game was going on, like it was an electric atmosphere. It was what we all wanted. Everything else at that point over the rest of the weekend was meh. Like it was just meh. And even didn't work even on Monday. Like on a Monday after Easter weekend, when you had a game to go to, there was still no one really there for the Maulers and the Bandits. So like the Easter excuse at that point was even gone. There's something's got to change.
Who was the offensive player of the week in the USFL? Or is he asking for ours?
I mean, it's either going to be Ta'amu or Satterfield, right?
Oh, what? I just typed in USFL and it took me to some website in Japan. USFL football. Okay, that's weird. I've never had that happen before.
I mean, I would assume it's probably going to be Satterfield. I would assume it's probably going to be Satterfield. I mean, I like Ta'amu also itself also. The two interceptions did not help. I think it's probably got to be
Satterfield. Like I said, he got things kicked off with a bang with the Moss, the touchdown. Let's see. I'm looking here. I'm not seeing we have power rankings. We got power
rankings here. You want to go over this real quick?
Let's talk about it, right?
Let's talk about this.
Number 1, the Tampa Bay Bandits, and it says here, Todd Haley's Bandits displayed deadly efficiency on defense in their 17-3 win against the Pittsburgh Maulers and were the only team to win this game by double digits. Now,
I'm cool with this. I think Tampa Bay on paper looked like the best team this coming into this weekend.
The Breakers come in at number 2. What? Come on.
Thank you. I'd say you want to talk about this. I read ahead. I had the cliff notes.
Managed to score on both defensive special teams with the safety on the punt block, and they absolutely harried. I don't know what that word means. Brian Scott. Okay. Number 3, the New Jersey Generals, and they lost to the Birmingham Stallions. The Birmingham Stallions are placed on 5th on the freaking power rankings. At 4th, you also have the Gamblers. Look, the Gamblers, I think, they look pretty good. I would put them up a little bit higher. But it's like 5 for the Birmingham Stallions?
The 0-1 Generals, who literally lost to the Birmingham Stallions, are 2 spots ahead.
What the heck?
I love this. I love this right now. Keep talking to me.
Crap together. This sucks. Like,
shout out to RJ Young, Fox Sports writer, for putting this together for me.
RJ Young, man, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what's out there in the water in Birmingham that he's drinking to write this kind of blasphemous stuff there. That is true. The Stallions looked like they were about to get cooked in front of their hometown crowd in the first half. It was only 14-7.5, but the score could have been stretched. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. It wasn't there, buddy. Like, come on. I don't like that. Okay. Like, I'm sorry. You got the Philadelphia Stars, who look like absolute dog water at 6 above the Michigan. Oh, the Panthers are interesting. Okay. They all look like that, but you got Birmingham down at the bottom there. I think there's some blasphemy going on here, Tommy.
Birmingham is the worst team that actually won a game, is what he's saying. Wow. I love it.
I don't trust anyone named RJ now. I'm with you there, Outlaw. I'm with you. This is blasphemy.
I'm lightheaded. My stomach hurts.
This is absolute blasphemy.
But yeah, you've got the Maulers at 8, which I'm cool with. I think the Maulers at 8 makes sense. I think the Panthers at 7. I think that makes sense because they don't even have their quarterbacks figured out. Like Shea Patterson and Paxton Lynch both kind of struggled, put the ball on the ground 5 different times. We saw that. I think that makes sense. The Stars at 6. Okay, like I don't hate this one. But like you lost. So why is the Generals not down there? But I mean, it's like
exactamundo. Like, I don't know. Like, is it because they have Luis Perez?
And Perez did look good, if we're being honest.
He did.
You can make the case that the Generals only lost because they didn't put Perez back in the game. They left DeAndre Johnson in there.
But that's the thing. It's like, what are we factoring into these power rankings? Are we factor in, what they could have done? Like, that's every football game. Like, you looked at something like, well, hey, if they would have done this, the outcome would have been different. Like, this is blasphemy, Tommy. Birmingham should not be at number 5 here. This is ridiculous.
I know New Orleans. I'm properly ranked. I don't have a complaint with this. New Orleans sitting here number 2. No, I'm cool. And not only that, but New Orleans plays Tampa Bay this weekend. Because here's another thing for me too. This is we're getting off a tangent so bad today. This is rivalry week in the USFL. You've played one game. How can you have a rivalry in your first season?
I'm guessing it's just because you look at New Orleans and Tampa Bay. Like, when you look in the NFL, those are two, rivals in a sense in that NFC South division. But it's like, yeah, I don't see that. But like, here's the deal. Okay?
Don't tell me who to hate. I will figure that out on my own. Don't tell me who my rival is.
The Birmingham Stallions play the Houston Gamblers on Fox Sports 1 this weekend at 7:00 p.m. Eastern time. Now, here's the deal. If the Stallions win, RJ Young better come on this show next week, and he better apologize for putting Birmingham as low as 5th. Okay, that I'm going to hold him to it, and I will harass him on social media.
I was going to say, we are literally going to get a weekly spot from RJ Young to go over his USFL power rankings, aren't we?
We should.
Is he the new Dan Zeus? Is RJ Young the new Dan Zeus?
He might be. He might be.
I think he might be.
I'm. You know what? I regret looking that up because I'm fired up today. My Apple Watch says my heart rate's a little too high. I need to calm it down here. So.
Like I said, I'm peaceful. I'm happy right now. New Orleans Breakers had a great game. Davin Bellamy had that fantastic game. Had 3 sacks, I think, in the first quarter. Ended with 6 for the entire team. The front 7 looked good. Shout out to the New Orleans Breakers. Number 2 in the power rankings.
It's the civil conflict this week here. Yep. We are at that point there, Outlaw 2448. We were just talking about Deebo Samuel, too, at the top of the show here in terms of his contract. Well, there's another player here, Tommy, in the National Football League that maybe doesn't have kind of the same stance that, Deebo or some of these other wide receivers. Cooper Kupp. And are we shocked that Cooper Kupp is like, hey, I'm just looking for something that's fair. I'm not looking to compete with anybody else. Like, he was.
Does that not sound like Cooper Kupp?
This season, he's like, he was asked, are you thinking about the touchdown record, reception record? He's like, no, to be honest with you, he's like, I don't feel like I deserve that with the additional game. I feel like those guys have done it. Like, he is the most humble dude ever. Like, okay, Cooper Kupp, if I ever, if I had a daughter, I'd be like, hey, okay, Cooper Kupp could date my daughter because he seems like a pretty honest guy.
Just not Stephon Diggs.
Yes.
Remember that video where they were literally interviewing, hey, who would you not want to date your sister? And everyone said Stephon Diggs.
Yep, Stephon Diggs. That's funny, too.
Everyone said that.
The Broncos asked that question, and they're like, Shelby Harris. And Shelby's like, why me? He's like, I got a wife and kids. Why wouldn't you want me? But, no, that's funny there. But here's the thing with Cooper Kupp here. He's seeking a fair deal with the Los Angeles Rams for him. What an epic season. I mean, you could make the argument as well. Like, what he was able to do last season was ridiculous.
It was historic.
We talk about Deebo Samuel being a weapon. Cooper Kupp was unbelievable. You can't guard Cooper Kupp. Nobody can. It is ridiculous how he creates his own separation. And just a few years ago, he's coming off of an ACL injury that everyone's like, oh, hey, looking at wide receivers that come off ACLs, they tend to not perform as well ever again. I mean, Cooper Kupp has completely shut down that narrative.
We forget that he had an ACL injury. I completely forget about that.
It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
But it's like his production, you'd make it seem like he's never had any issue in his life here. But it says, as the market has changed this offseason, Kupp is not concerned with other deals of wide receivers like Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill have gotten potentially Deebo Samuel, depending on his situation here. He says, I don't think that's really kind of the approach that I take. I definitely think there's a place you want to be. There's a place that you feel like is fair, a place for me and for this organization. I'm not trying to beat anybody. I'm not trying to compare myself to anyone else. It's more about being in a place that's just right for both sides. So he's willing to be the team-friendly guy, but also something that's fair to him. How often do we see NFL teams maybe come to this conclusion? I don't know if there's much in that regard there. I don't see it.
Yeah, to me, look, Cooper Kupp, I appreciate what you're saying. I really do. Dude, get your money. You earned it. You know what I mean? Last year, 191 targets, 145 receptions, over almost 2,000 receiving yards, accounted for 32.4% of the targets and 33% of the air yards. He was number 1 in the NFL in target share, and that was on a team that also had Robert Woods on that team. You had Odell Beckham Jr. on that team for a little bit of time. This was a stacked team, but yet it was still the Cooper Kupp show with Matthew Stafford. I get he's trying to be humble about it, and this just very much seems like the person Cooper Kupp is, based off the little interviews I have seen. So I'm not going to sit here and try to say, I know the damn dude. He just seems like the type of guy that's going to be unselfish about this, but at the same time, get your damn money, man. Like, you earned it. And I'm sure he'll be fairly compensated. Like, they're not going to lowball him, I don't think. To me, it very much feels like the Rams are going to need to do him a solid. Hey, look, you did this for us. You're still here with us. We're still in this championship window. We are continuing to build out this roster, adding more pieces to it. Adding in shoot, who did they add?
Allen Robinson.
Thank you. Not only, Allen Robinson. Good God, that was dumb. Not only that, but Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner's the one that was tripping me up. But yeah, you add all these pieces to it. Like, this is still a team that's very much one of the favorites, and especially right now, they've got to be the favorite in the NFC for sure, because like there were only about 3 teams, and we said like the 4th on question mark was the 49ers. Well, not only is there a question mark of who's going to be quarterback, who the hell are they going to throw the damn ball to? So right now, it's absolutely the Rams division to walk away with, because you got questions in Seattle. Kyler Murray is still doing whatever hell's going on in Arizona. And then you've got the whole thing with the 49ers. Like, to me, it's pay the damn dude, because you're probably going to get – I'm not going to say you're going to get, 1,947 yards again, but is Cooper Kupp probably going to be Cooper Kupp, which means he's also unguardable? Yeah, probably so. Like, I get he doesn't want to do the comparisons. That's fine. We'll do it on our end and say, like, there is no comparison for Cooper Kupp. No one can match what he's doing on the field right now.
That's the hard part too. Like, nobody really does what he does. Like, he can line up on the outside. He can line up on the inside. Like, he can play anywhere here.
God, he's so intelligent too. Like, his interviews breaking down things. Like,
I love it. It's a coach's wet dream.
Rachel Bonetta, when she does her videos and she would do like the spoofs on those things, when she did the one of Cooper Kupp's, when she did Cooper Kupp's interview, like, I don't know how long it took her to rehearse that, to try to remember all those things. My God, like, she nailed that when she did it on Cooper.
No, spot on there. And that was a great interview too, talking about just, hey, if I beat my guy here, they're rolling,
But that's what it takes to play in the NFL. That's what people don't understand. It's not just being an athlete. You have to be so freaking intelligent to diagnose things in a split second, to where you're still playing on instinct, but because you've ingrained all those things on what coverages are. Like, when Cooper Kupp sees, okay, I've got a safety shaded over, I see how the defense rotates, all while running at full speed, and we're trying to remember his own pace with his quarterback. Like, you have to be so smart to play in the NFL. And these professional athletes, like, oh, they're just big dumb athletes. No, they're really not. Like, these dudes are just different level humans, like, physically and mentally, to be out there and play this game at this high of a level. That's why so many guys fail. Like, I don't really want to read this playbook. You want to be Cooper Kupp? Read your damn playbook.
That dude is, the amount of time, he is, Sean McVay's got to be like, yo, I love this guy. Like, he's going to be my son. Like, that's what Sean McVay probably thinks of Cooper Kupp.
He is Sean McVay's version of Taysom Hill was to Sean Payton.
But even more, I'd say, like, the love and affection.
But actually a good
Sean
player.
Has there. Very true too. By the way, I would not be shocked when Cooper Kupp is done playing. He probably will get into coaching at some point. He probably.
I can see it. I can absolutely see it.
Yeah. He'll be a receivers coach, and he'd be a damn good receiver coach too. The way that he does things, he'd be a great teacher. Man, excited.
Pair him with Mike McDaniel. I can see that being a pair. I can see those two getting along really well.
Where did Wes Welker end up? Is Wes Welker still in San Francisco right now, or did he leave and go to Miami? I think he went to Miami, didn't he? I know Patrick Surtain's dad is coaching in
he is with Miami. He's with Miami.
So Wes Welker's with the Dolphins, a place where he started out his NFL career. Interesting enough.
Did he start there, or did he start with the Chargers?
Wait, where did he start? He played for the Dolphins. I know that. Wes Welker. Thank God for Google. His team, San Francisco 40. Oh, team's coach. What the hell, man? He
was signed by the Chargers as a UDFA, and then Welker also played as a Dolphins. Okay,
there we go. And then he ended up being just an absolute dog in New England. And the Dolphins like, what the heck? We had this guy. But now he's back coaching, which is great.
So he made it out of camp with the Chargers, but was released after the first game when the Chargers claimed safety Clinton Hart off waivers.
He was Schottenheimer. And he was coaching with San Francisco last year. So, hey, Debo? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, there's another piece of the pie. Like, there's another thing.
Josh McDaniel, Debo, they got everything going on right there.
You want to talk about fake? Okay, we've said they were like the second tier down, like they were just below Buffalo. If we're now adding Debo Samuel to this team, they might be
able to compete.
Now we need to have a different conversation about the power structure in the AFC East and just the AFC in general.
Yeah, no, it's going to be an absolute just bloodbath, I think, this upcoming season.
Why is everyone going to the AFC also, by the way? Like, good God.
You think you'd want some, parity. Like, the AFC is very top-heavy right now. You think you want to balance it out by having some really good players in the NFC. And, I don't know. Keep them in the NFC. Like, San Francisco, trade with the NFC. So,
you're just saying anywhere but Kansas City.
I just don't want to end up in Kansas City. I had a nice little reply on Rappaport's tweet where he mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs. Kind of sums up how I feel about the situation anytime the Chiefs are mentioned. It's like, it's like when you look at Breaking Bad, when you look at Heisenberg and you look at obviously Jesse, and he's like, how can you keep getting away with this? Like, that is the Kansas City Chiefs right now if they get Deebo Samuel.
Right.
I will be miserably angry if that happens, even though my good friend Outlaw 2448 will be extremely happy if that does happen.
He's still not getting the Broncos. If that happens, he's definitely never getting the Broncos community.
Think about, he ain't getting in regardless. As much as I love my guy there. He says, Wes Welker never won a Super Bowl and dude was with the Pats. Like, dude, he was putting up.
That's actually a really good point.
Like, how crazy is that? When we
that's
think
like going
about
to Alabama
Welker
and
played,
not winning a title.
Exactly, because when Welker played for the Pats, like it was the Pats at the top in that era where Wes Welker was playing. Yeah. He goes to Denver, has a chance to go to win a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they fall short to the Seattle Seahawks. And then from that point, like he dealt with concussions and simply just never could do it after that. That's why he ended up getting into coaching, which is I'm grateful for because there was some legitimate concern for Wes Welker at some point. People are like, hey, I'm really worried about maybe where this guy's going to end up. Yeah. And that's when the whole concussion movie happened.
That was when CTE was getting really big at that point. It was like a main focal point of what the NFL was talking about.
Yeah. No, I'm just glad he's coaching and doing something he loves. He's still impacting the game in a positive way. And look,
more players need to end up being coached if they want to go down that path. Because it is not for everyone. But I love seeing former players getting back out there and just becoming a coach at that point. I think it's so good for the game. Get guys who have actually done it before rather than talking about X and O's who have never been out there.
For me, I think that's the thing. It's like for a lot of football players, if like the football thing never works out, like let's say you have to retire due to health, or let's say as you get older, it's like, what's your fallback plan? Obviously that's why they hope that the NFL and the NFLPA do a really good job, in my opinion, in allowing these players to pursue things on the outside, like promoting that they run small businesses. Like, I forgot who it was, but they run a nothing bunt cake factory. I forgot which players did that. God, who was that? Because I remember somebody.
Didn't the Bennett brothers open up a bakery?
I think it was the Bennett brothers. There was somebody.
I don't know if they did.
No, I think it was it one of the McCourty brothers? I think the McCourty family actually opened up one of those nothing but cake bakeries, if I'm not mistaken. And Darren Ravel, that slimy little weasel, he was bashing them for it. Like, it's like, okay, you're bashing somebody for setting up a business plan that obviously is setting them and their family up. Like after football, like you need to be prepared. The NFL side of things, a team can move on from you and the league can move on from you. Football will quit you way before you quit the game itself. What are you going to do? Like, Tommy, here's the deal. Like for me, my whole identity growing up in my early, from 18 all the way to about 22 years old was invested in football. And when I tore my ACL, I had that thought, what am I going to do again? I can't come back and play. I'm not getting paid enough to do this. So I'm like, what am I going to do? And that's how I, eventually wound up doing sports media. I found out that was going to be my path. So many players have this happen to them in year one, rookie season, year two, undrafted guys. And for those undrafted guys that suffer these injuries in training camp or the preseason, that's it. That is the final nail in their coffin of their career as a player for the most part in some of those situations. Like, it's unfair, and there needs to be better support places put into, the process for former players. Whether you've played in the NFL for a year, you need to have some support afterwards. Like that's one thing I don't like about the NFL business side. And maybe they've made, kind of grounds to change it, but it's like when you're a young guy, an undrafted guy, and you get seriously hurt, what are you going to do? Like a team's going to cut you. They're going to put you on IR. And then after the stint, they're going to cut you from that. What are you going to do for that player? Like, how can you support that player? Because really him getting hurt's not his fault. So there's that side to it that I think that we have to continue to look at as, society, as a structure for $1 billion corporation. I don't know, man. It's an interesting thing to ponder here, but
actually, if I remember correctly, it was the HBCU Legacy Bowl because they had the HBCU Combine, and then they had the Legacy Bowl. At that event, there was a job fair happening at the exact same time. So where players who were actually participating in the Legacy Bowl, they were actually able to, at that point, to go out and have these interviews with the different job candidates, potentially, hey, look, if you don't make it to the NFL, we're helping to set you up for something future down the road. I loved seeing that so much. Like, more people need to be doing that to help these people out. Like, look, football doesn't work for everyone. A very, very select few people are able to turn this into a career, a long time, fruitful career. A lot of guys don't make it out of the first year of their contracts. You've got to be a very special player to do that. So you've got to put these guys in a situation where they're not only succeeding on the field, but if that doesn't work, how do we help them succeed in life? How do we help them succeed in their communities, in the business ventures they want to go on, whatever they want to do down the road? Like these teams in the NFL, like and the players union especially, like help these guys out. Don't just throw away like the undrafted free agents and only focus on the guys who are bringing the big spotlights to these teams. Like the Deebo Samuels. Don't focus on the number ones. Focus on the rest of the depth chart as well and help these guys out who aren't going to make their path in the NFL, but their start in it can also be what starts them off on the rest of their journey. There needs to be some better help for these guys, especially because a lot of these guys, they don't have the best teams built around them. They're still with those guys that were from their hometowns. Like they were trying to get away from when you were growing up in those situations. Like a lot of guys have the wrong voices in their heads and in their ears telling them what they should and what they shouldn't do. So there's got to be something that these leagues can do to help these guys out, especially like your UDFAs who didn't necessarily stick with the team on the very first go.
Interesting news and note here from Ian Rapport says Giants general manager Joe Shane says the team has received trade calls centered around cornerback James Bradbury. Could this be like we talked about him yesterday on the show?
Yeah.
Could he be a draft day trade? And look, I'm looking at the Las Vegas Raiders as the tie just because Patrick Graham is the defensive coordinator there. They need cornerback help,
especially after the whole Arnett thing. Yeah.
Yeah. You lose at Arnett. You have Trayvon Mullen, you have Nate Hobbs there, but it's like really outside of that, you're lacking at the cornerback position in Las Vegas.
And that's not a thing that's not something you want to lack at in the AFC West. Like not at all. Because you already made the moves to go out and get Chandler Jones. You already made the moves at that point to bring in Devontae Adams. Like, keep going. Like, don't stop. Like, you can't half-ass this. You got to whole-ass it. Like, go out there and get your cornerbacks too.
Nah, they have some interesting moves there. We'll see if Bradbury's another name that's traded during the NFL draft or before the NFL draft. It could happen. Usually I like to look at the day before the NFL draft because that's what happened last year. Like, the day before the NFL draft, the Denver Broncos traded for Teddy Bridgewater, which was very interesting. And we're like, okay, does this impact like what they're going to do at quarterback? Like, are they going to go quarterback?
It absolutely did.
Able. So there is that. So, I mean, look for that to happen. I don't think anything will happen. I'd be shocked if anything happened between now and next Thursday. I think next Thursday will be, or, Wednesday will be the day where we see something there.
The funny thing about it, like, it's not even the first bit of news we had come out of the New York today.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, let's get to our next part here. There's Giants finally on Bradbury trade. It's been rumored and Chiefs meted during the Tyreek trade. Yep, there is that there.
It's not a well-kept secret. Like, this is something like everyone's talking about.
It's been around there. But let's talk about another New York player, Kadarius Toney. This was very, very interesting. Obviously, the second-year player for the New York Giants, a ridiculous weapon when healthy, is not reporting for the offseason program for not mandatory, but the voluntary off-season camp that they have going on right now. And usually this is a little different though, Tommy. And the reason we want to say that this is different, usually you see veteran players not report for this, but for a guy like Kadarius Toney, brand new offense, right? Brand new head coach. And he did not have a season last year where he could stay healthy. Like he dealt with injuries all throughout last season. As a rookie, you need to be around there. And he hasn't even received the playbook yet. The new playbook that they have, he has not been able to receive that.
That's the big part, I think, of that whole thing. Because, like, you're not ingrained with this new regime. Like, Brian Daboll does not know you. Like, he did not draft you. That was the previous group that was here. It's for him not to get the playbook right now, because apparently, like, Daboll said in his interview, like, they've done nothing remotely or, like, online, like, virtually, I should say. Like, everything's been happening in person. So right now, he's absolutely falling behind not having that.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Kadarius here because, like I said, there was a time, I know he was dealing with that ankle injury last season, Tommy.
And then came back too early.
But, man, like, even in some of those short bursts, he was, like, ridiculous. I believe it was a game against the Saints, if I'm not mistaken. He had this ridiculous circus-like play, just could not be tackled, and then re-aggravates it, and he goes out, and then he's ruled out quickly. Literally, like, within 5 minutes after leaving, he's ruled out quickly, and we're like, oh, shoot, that's, usually when they're ruled out quickly like that, not good.
Yeah.
Not ideal.
It was either that one or that was the game that happened against Vegas where he came out and he was rolled out instantly. Then he came back the next week against Tampa Bay. He warmed up and then had to go out. And then he missed like the next, I think, like 5 games. Didn't come back to like week 16.
Let's see here.
Because it was that week 5 because he played the Saints in week 4. That was a week where he had 6 receptions for 78 yards. And then it was that week 5 game where he had his blow up when literally every other New York Giants wide receiver was injured. Like Sterling Shepard, Kenny Galladay, Darius Slayton at that time was injured. I think Melvin Ingram at that point, not Melvin Ingram, but I think Evan Ingram was also injured at the same time. But he goes off, has 10 receptions on 12 targets, 190 yards almost, but just didn't score. That was the breakout game for Kadarius Toney. And was like, oh, wait, this dude can ball. because he like his whip routes are some of the funnest things to watch, and it's carried over from his time in Florida. Like there's a reason Kyle Trask was drafted the way he was, and it was because he was throwing the damn ball to Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney. Like he made him look a lot better than he probably actually is. So it's guy like we're expecting to have a good season. Like it's still voluntary, no question about it. But you should be there. It's that whole thing. Hey, I'm going over to the in-laws house. Do you want to come with me? Like you don't have to, but you can if you want. You do it. Like you do it because you don't have to, but you probably need to. This is one of those situations where like you don't have to, but you probably should be there. That's kind of my whole situation here with Kadarius Toney.
Well, here's the deal. I'm looking at Draft Sharks right now, and the injury history here for Kadarius Toney, August 14, 2021, he had a grade 2 thigh hamstring strain. He missed most of training camp with that. He suffered an ankle injury in week 5, lost to the Dallas Cowboys, and he went back in the next game against the Rams, and he re-aggravated his existing ankle injury, and then he would miss 1 game. And then he would miss 4 games due to a leg quad strain.
That was weeks 12 through 15.
Yep. And then he missed, beginning in December 1st, an abdomen muscle strain, grade 2. He missed 3 games due to an oblique injury. Now, this is not very good if you're looking at like Draft Sharks, what they say. They look at his injury history, and they said that he has a 54% chance of injury in 2022. And
how do we come up with that?
I don't know. It says 54% chance that he misses at least 2 quarters of action in 2022. 4.5% chance.
I'm probably going to eat a Chipotle burrito that's not going to agree with my stomach. Do I have a 50% chance of that happening also? Like,
probably.
I don't get it.
I'm not a big fan of like the injury projection stuff. Like, obviously, if you look at a guy that's been injured, I
don't like projecting guys to get hurt. I don't like doing that. Like,
so weird.
If I expect, like, when I do my projections, like, I never project guys out to do 17 games. Like, especially now, like, not only do injuries happen, but not only that, but like, maybe guys just get benched. Like we don't want to play them the final week of the season. Like there's always kind of things that happen, but like, I'm just baking that in, but I'm not sitting here trying to put a percentage on like how much time a guy is going to miss. Like it's unless someone has a massive history of it. Like I don't like doing that.
No, I'm with you there. I would be very intrigued to see if that's the case. But it's like, Kadarius Toney needs to report at some point because you have to obviously, this is a big year for Daniel Jones. This is a huge year for the organization in general. And you have to find a way to take the next step. And look, Sterling Shepard's coming off of a torn Achilles. He's back on good
that was suffered late in the year.
That's that's concerning there. You also have a guy in Kenny Golladay who you paid all this money to, and you couldn't find a way to get him the football or make him produce in this offense. There's issues there, and hopefully Brian Dable can unlock it, but Kadarius Toney's going to be a big part of that, and we'll see if they can find a way to bring him in there. Some really quick notes here as we get into our 2-minute warning here on PFN Daily. The New Orleans Saints are going to have Jarvis Landry in town here today for a visit, and could he potentially end up with Jameis Winston, Marquez Callaway, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara in that offense? We'll have to see. I think it's a good fit for him, obviously keeping him down south. Obviously, he played football at LSU. So you know what? Hey, keep him down south. I mean, I think that would be a good fit for him at this point. The only other team I could really see Jarvis Landry maybe fitting into would be the Green Bay Packers. And the Green Bay Packers would be rumoredly interested in Deebo Samuel, which makes me scratch my head a little bit. Like, how are they going to make that happen? Okay. Interesting.
I mean, they were allegedly willing to pay Devontae Adams. Like, they were going to pay what he was going to get from Los Angeles. It was just they had made their bed and they had to lay with it at that point. So I don't think it's the money aspect of it. But, I mean, obviously money would be an issue, but it's not like they did want to pay Devontae Adams, so now they're not going to pay, Deebo Samuel. To me, it sounds like the money was there. It was just the two sides were too far split.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, It's going to be a little crazy there, Tommy. I think we're going to have to buckle up, though, for this offseason. It's going to be absolutely nuts continuously.
You need to be straight strapped in right now. You should have buckled up a long time ago.
Well, on tomorrow's episode of PFN Daily, we'll find out a little bit more if there's any more fallout from the trade request here for Deebo Samuel. We'll talk about Justin Fields tomorrow a little bit, maybe what he's expressed to the media about his hopes here for the 2022 NFL season. You'll get that and much more on tomorrow's episode of PFN Daily. Don't forget to join Tommy and I on Twitter tonight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time for a PFN Daily Twitter Spaces. Of course, we're going to be talking about Deebo a little bit. So if you want to come on and chat with us, you can request to speak, and we'll obviously facilitate that as well. On Twitter, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time at PFN365. We'll see you there. Make sure you join us there. And if you don't see us then, we'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of the show.